Croeso I Bysgota Cymru. Welcome to Fishing in Wales.
Welcome to Llyn Coron. It's an 80-acre natural lake in Anglesey and it's full of wild brown trout. Now, the great thing about this venue is they allow float tubing. So I'm really looking forward to getting out there, paddling around, casting some traditional wet flies for these wild brown trout from the float tube. So I'm going to go through a few things here before we dive into the water. So what is a float tube? Essentially it's an outer shell of nylon with a main bladder inside it and a secondary bladder here. And we're going to pump this up to give us the buoyancy. Imagine you're fishing in an armchair. It's a very similar setup. And they're perfectly safe, by the way. I've been doing this for over 20 years and I've never heard of a fatality at all in the UK involving a float tube. But there are a few safety things to go through. So, life jacket, this is important as a backup safety device. Float tube fins. You won't be able to paddle around a lake without these. So do not attempt it just in your waders. Get a set of these. And waders, as I mentioned, they're essential. You can use your boat foot waders or your stocking foot waders with your wading boots on them. Well, the next stage is to inflate the tube. So lightweight tubes like this one, you can actually inflate them by mouth. And we've got a valve in there. But we're not walking to the top of a mountain lake here. We've got a pump. So that'll make it a lot easier. Now we don't want to have it, so pumped up that it could potentially burst. We just want it really nice and solid feeling, but we're not going to go over the top. So that's the float tube inflated. As you can see, it's nice and firm there. Got the back bladder inflated as well. So the next step is getting this down to the water to launch. Whatever you do, don't put the flippers on your feet and then attempt to walk down to the bank. You'll be asking for trouble. So we put the flippers on. That's the very last thing we do once we get to the edge. Okay, so once you get to the water's edge, you'll then put your flippers on. And what you're going to do is maneuver into the float tube and edge away by going backwards out into the lake. And just take your time and find a gradually sloped area, somewhere with a nice shallow gradient. So we don't want to go straight in where it's bouldery and deep water. It's just somewhere where you can get into that water and maneuver yourself in. So a slow walk back into the water and settle into the tube and then kick away with the fins. Maneuvering the tube, it takes a little bit of getting used to. It's almost like riding a bicycle backwards with that motion in the fins. So you actually move backwards in the tube. It's quite easy to pick it up, within 10 minutes. Usually most people get the hang of it. And it allows you then to paddle around the lake. And in these wild trout venues, it's getting your flies back onto the shore. So it's not always about getting right out in the middle. You can get like 20, 25 yards off, cast your fly line back in, and then you're on that first drop off, which is often where the fish are lying. Getting out of the water is essentially the reverse process. So paddle your way back in, backwards, just taking your time as you go until you reach around the knee depth. You can then stand up and shuffle your way back to the shore, just taking your time. It looks a bit awkward, but it's a process that you can't really rush. And just a final thought on safety, think about wind. Don't go out on a really rough, choppy and windy day. So pick a day with some gentle breeze. Don't go into a huge venue, your first ever time float tubing. Pick a small lake. Think about how you're going to get out at the end of your fishing. It's sometimes a lot easier to beach yourself and then walk all the way back, much less tiring too. Remember, you can't just go and use a float tube at any stillwater venue. It all depends on the permissions of the fishery. So it's really important just to go and check. Now, I'm going to flash up on the screen a number of venues in Wales that allow the use of float tubes. Float tubing is a wonderful way to enjoy fishing on a Welsh lake. So if you follow these simple guidelines, you can ensure that your experience with a float tube will go smoothly. And importantly, get out there and enjoy it. That's what it's all about.
Discover fishing in Wales.